Hello, and welcome everyone to a very special Uncle Bobbie's virtual author event. I'm so happy that so many of you showed up to this today, taking time out of your Saturday to join us for the celebration of the release of this really great YA novel, The Jump. Author Brittney Morris is here with us today, and she's going to tell us more about the book. Please make yourself comfortable, grab a beverage, get cozy. We're going to begin in just a few moments after I go over some housekeeping rules. The Jump was released this last week, and if you haven't already gotten your copy, you can do so by clicking the green button at the bottom of the screen. That'll take you to our Uncle Bobbie's bookshop. If you find yourself in Philadelphia and you can come on over to the store, please do and get your copy there. As always, our live audience members are invited to submit questions that they'd like answered after the discussion during the question and answer session. You can do this by using the Ask a Question module at the bottom of the screen over the course of the conversation. All right, let's get into it. Moderating today, we have Eric Smith. He's a young adult author and literary agent with PS Literary, living in Philadelphia. Whoop, whoop. His latest book, Jagged Little Pill, the novel, it's a collaboration with Alanis Morissette, Academy Award winner Diablo Cody, and Glenn Ballard. It's an adaptation of the Grammy and Tony Award-winning musical. His upcoming books include the YA rom-com With or Without You, and the anthology First Year Orientation with Lauren Gibaldi. Eric Smith, I'm going to bring him up. Welcome, Eric.
Oh, there we are. Hello.
Welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And now for our featured author. She's the author of Slay, which, if anyone remembers, we did an event for Uncle Bobbie's some years ago, and The Cost of Knowing. She's written video game narrative for Insomniac Games' Marvel's Spider-Man 2 for PlayStation 5, Unknown Worlds, Subnautica, Below Zero, and Soma Games' The Lost Legends of Redwall. She's the founder and former president of the Boston University Creative Writing Club. She holds a BA in economics. You can find her online at authorbrittneymorris.com and on Twitter or Instagram at Brittney M. Morris. Let's get her up here. Woman of the hour.
Hi.
Yay.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, both of you. I'm excited to get into it. I will make myself scarce.
Hooray! What's up, Brittney?
Hi.
This is excellent. I like getting to see your face. I feel like we text all the time, but I don't get to see you face to face virtually as much as I'd like. So this is wonderful. Thanks for having me to chat about your awesome new book.
Yeah, thanks for being here with me.
No, please, of course. So why don't you talk a little bit about what the book's about? I mean, it just came out this week, so we are going to have a spoiler-free conversation.
Yes.
But for anyone who has this still sitting on their TBR pile and haven't dug in, what's the deal? What's going on in The Jump?
Yeah, so The Jump is about 4 Seattle teenagers who are amateur cryptologists, and they take on an extremely high-stakes cryptology puzzle posted by a mysterious vigilante group in the hopes of winning power and influence because they're trying to take down an oil refinery that's going up in their neighborhood. So we've got heists through the city and escapes and I think this is the most high-octane novel I've ever written. So.
Awesome. So I have to ask, I have a couple of specific questions about the book, but first I want to talk about what is it that draws you to writing about geek culture in your book so much, right? So like here we have like cryptology kids who have this online game, in Slay, we have the online game, we have, even in The Cost of Knowing, I would argue it has geek, we are seeing into the future and all these other elements, and Spider-Man in your Miles Morales book. What draws you to these stories?
That's a great question. I think first off, has to be my history with gaming.
Mm-hmm.
Like gaming has been a part of my life since I can remember. And I've played so many indie games that tackle such huge topics, like topics that like most people don't know have been addressed in gaming, like depression, anxiety, terminal illness, grief, you name it. It's been addressed. It's been talked about in a video game. Um, so tackling big topics like racial identity and slay and being present as a person of color in the cost of knowing and taking on an oil refinery or taking on the establishment in the jump. Just, I mean, all of those are pretty big topics. They're big questions with 50,000 word answers. And like gaming and like, I should say reality adjacent states just seem to make a lot of sense to tackle them through. And I often find that people are a lot more likely to believe a story if it's reality adjacent as opposed to in the world as we know it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. So is there something about geek culture that makes it, I don't know, makes that lens easier to tell a story under? You know, like is it easier to talk about these epic challenges by bringing in like pop culture?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, there's so much like love and heart in geekdom and like just dedication and like having that feeling that like you're all in, and just being really passionate about something that I feel like aligns really, really well with the story. And I think most of my friends are geeks too. So it's just what I know.
I mean, yeah, I think it makes it more accessible in a way, you know, like someone who might not necessarily be interested in learning about anxiety or depression, you know, might experience it in a game or in a book and suddenly, you know, get it a little bit
Yeah.
more, you know. I feel like Slay does a great job of that. Like, here's a book about online games and everything, but guess what? We're going to talk about some serious stuff in the mix there. And you're just so good at that.
Thank you.
Of course. You know, another thing I noticed that you do, and it's definitely here in the jump, like you get it like right away in the first chapter, is like a lot of your stories center like these like working class kids and working class families. Like what draws you to that?
I love that question. I mean, I grew up middle class, so again, they say write what you know.
Mhm.
Um, but I also love like I love being in a position where I can tell a story about middle class kids of color. I think so many stories about people of color in general and kids of color center around people who are poorer, and who are disadvantaged, which those stories are super important and need to be told. But I also feel like middle class kids deserve some visibility as well. And in this book, I actually really love talking about, you know, Jackson, his crew versus Kareem and his crew, and just the disconnect between the two of them. Kareem is part of Team Royal, which is the opposing team in the jump, and just the absolute just Kareem is so far removed from the real world. It's wild, and I really enjoyed exploring those differences.
So, you know, one one of the bigger themes in this book, I feel, centers around environmental justice, right? And like environmental racism, even, right? Like you see it again and again in the news where like some big company decides to run a pipeline or some sort of machine, and every time you see what the neighborhood is, it's through a neighborhood of marginalized people and people of color. And what made you want to dig into that story?
I think it's I think it was a buildup of several stories just
Mm.
over the last decade, maybe, because that was that. I mean, I'm 30. That was like when I started paying attention to like what was going on. So, I mean, Flint, like, I mean, there's been so many pipelines that have popped up. I can name any of them, but
Yeah.
there have been so many travesties of environmentalism that have come up, and it always disadvantages poor people and people of color first. Um, and I feel like it's the only reason is because rich people are loud and they're loud with their money, which talks even louder. And I felt like it was about time there was a book about kids taking on a topic this big, because news articles about such huge things happening in the world can seem insurmountable. They can seem, you know, how do we even start to deal with this? We're just one, I'm just one person. I'm a young person. I'm, you know, just becoming acquainted with the world as an adult. So like you're learning how to adult. And I think this book, at the end of the day, is a message of hope, and it's a message of finding what being powerful means to you in any circumstance, and like seizing your power, whatever your situation is.
Gosh, I love that answer so much. And like, I think about like when I was a teenager reading books and just trying to be a little more aware of the world around me. Like something like this, like environmental justice, like was not really on my mind as a kid, right? And like it might not be on the minds of a lot of other kids. So like them being able to pick up this book and have it presented in such an accessible way, I think is just so valuable, right? Like,
Thank you.
and you do it in all your books where you have this like this big message, this big theme to deliver, but you never do it in that like, well, I'm going to teach you something sort of way, right? Like you never write anything that feels like didactic, where it's talking down and teaching. How do you balance that? Because that's I don't know, that's so difficult.
Thanks. I mean, that means a lot because, like, even though I'm writing books about big topics and I have strong opinions on those big topics, I never really want to come through and just say, like, this is the only way to be.
Mhm.
So, in all of my characters and all of their circumstances, I hope that my readers see, like, a seed of empathy in each one and can relate to each one on some level. Like, even Kareem, who is, like, totally, like, I find him so unrelatable. Like, his experience as a teenager is so different from mine. Even down to the way he talks to his mom. Like I was writing that and I was like, oh, good, okay. um, but like, I don't know. I just want each of them to show my readers a different way to be, and then let my readers decide whether that's, good or bad or helpful or harmful. The number one writing rule, right, is show, don't tell. And I really, really latch onto that.
Well, you are wildly good at it.
Thank you.
Speaking of moms, I have to ask a side question. What character's mom is it? One of the moms in the book is like big into crystals and stuff, and I'm curious where that came from.
I love that. So I'm not myself into crystals. But I lived in Seattle for 7 years, so I'm very familiar with crystal culture.
Mhm.
And like essential oils culture and all of that. Like I I love people who are into those things because generally they just seem really like zen and very like live and let live. And I had a few friends in Seattle who were very into like crystals and essential oil, but also like if somebody had a broken arm, they were like, no, get to the hospital. Like they were very much like on the line between I love my crystals and essential oils and I also love scientific advancements and all that. So I don't know, Jax's mom in particular, just I just love her. Yeah. And she also like has tattoos and is very like alt mom, which I that's the kind of mom I want to be, honestly, is just
So, like,
like
to confess, I have those
relax.
kind of vibes. I have my little rocks. And
Hey.
I have my little quartzes and all that stuff. Just
Yes.
I keep them around my books, the books that I'm writing, just like some good energy. Some bestseller foreign language energy. Let's put this on these books. Awesome. And you also do this thing with parents in your books. Like I feel like all the parents are always so well written, and there's this thing that happens in like a lot of YA, and some of our colleagues do it. It's fine, but like the parents get sort of like cut out really fast of the stories, and you always have like great parental figures in your books. What drives those characters?
Thank you. I think with Slay, since I was exploring Kira's racial identity, I knew I wanted to talk about generational differences with regard to one's relationship with Blackness. Like, Kira's mom is very, like, you know, speak properly, TM. And Kira is like, there's a word for that now, mom. It's called code switching, and it's kind of important. And Steph is like, yeah, actually, it's kind of a skill. Like, we know what to do. You should let us speak however we want at home because we know what to do when we go outside, etc. Just those intergenerational differences matter so much when you're talking about something like your relationship with your racial identity. And then in the jump, I mean, all of the kids, right, are just so passionate about taking down this company and like stopping them from invading their neighborhood. And the parents are like, they can offer some insight too on a topic this big. This has been going on for a long time. they've seen companies like this roll in. They know what it can do to an economy. They also have a lot to lose. And all 4 of these kids have parents that they can go to with their secrets and with their concerns. And that's the kind of parent I want to be. I would love for my son to involve him in his life and like be comfortable enough with me that he can talk to me about anything. I think every parent wants that with their kids. So in a way, I'm writing these parents as like a dream of mine.
On that, and I was totally gonna like slip in a question about like how becoming a parent has like influenced your writing for kids, because like I don't know about you, but like I feel like before like Langston and before I became a dad, like my YA novels had teens going off and doing like outrageous stuff and going on and now I look at it and I'm like, oh, you're grounded character. No, you can't do this. No, where's the parents? So like has been becoming a parent like influenced your writing a little bit there?
It has a little bit, yeah. It's funny. I when I was writing The Cost of Knowing, when I was drafting it, I was pregnant.
Mhm.
And then when I was editing it, and this was like the early stages of pregnancy, and then when I was editing it, I had already had my son. And so I'm sitting there re-looking at all of these things that I've put Alex and Isaiah through, and I'm just like, oh God, what if that was my child? Like it's different now, right? So I'm glad I got The Cost of Knowing out before I became a parent, because I don't know if I could have written it afterward. Um, yeah, and in The Jump, like Jax's mom in particular, I really relate to, because on one hand, like you get the idea that maybe before she became a mom, she might have been on the front lines of a protest, being like, this is not right, and all of this. And when Jax says, Mama, I want to protest, she's like, you know what about that? Yeah, that's a great cause and everything, but I got some stuff to work through first.
So speaking of let's going back to the protests and our kiddos and their team here. Why cryptology as the puzzle? What drove you to that?
I think cryptology was actually my first inspiration for The Jump. I've always wanted to write a book about centered around cryptology.
Mhm.
And I think the first time when I learned about cryptology, I saw a documentary about the Cicada 3301 puzzle, which was a series of cryptology puzzles that popped up between 2012 and 2014. And it was a very, very mysterious, eerie puzzle that came out of nowhere. The puzzles were incredibly difficult. There were stopping points throughout. So once a certain number of people passed like clue number 4 or 5 or whatever it was, they would lock down the puzzle and say, we want the leaders, not the followers. And so if you hadn't gotten to that clue yet, you were out of the game. And it's not known to this day what the winners of this puzzle won or even where they went. Some of them just vanished. This was also an international puzzle, so there were clues popping up all over the world with coordinates and stuff. It was wild. And so, I was like, oh my goodness, there's so many unanswered questions. This is begging to get turned into a book or inspire a book. So I knew I wanted to write about cryptology at the center, and I knew that teenagers taking on a cryptology puzzle would have a totally different outlook, especially with stakes as high as, losing their homes and families and their lives as they know it. And then another inspiration was the Chaz group in Capitol Hill, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. I think this came up a few years ago. There was a group of people in the Autonomous Zone in the middle of Capitol Hill who set up barriers, they set up tents, they set up their own economy. They said, we are seceding from the nation, essentially. And they were like, we're creating our own governance, we're creating our own laws, we're doing our own thing, we're not taking this anymore. And that is so very Seattle. Like if that was going to happen anywhere in the US, Seattle would be it. So you pair the Cicada 3301 puzzle with, teenagers, especially Gen Z. Like if there was ever going to be a generation to give a middle finger to the establishment, it's Gen Z. Like, and all of that just inspired these 4 chaos kids.
Excellent. Excellent. So The Jump is technically it's book number 4, right? So we had Slay, Miles, Cost of Knowing, and now this. Like, what have you learned over the course of writing 4 books?
I have learned quite a bit. With Slay, the first draft of Slay was written in 11 days, and it was to make it in time for a Twitter pitch contest, but like since writing that, like, I have to give a disclaimer every time I tell people that, do not attempt that. It's not, your mental health is not going to be happy. And I've since learned to like be a lot kinder to myself and say like, okay, ambition is one thing. Like, yes, we want this career, we want this job, we love what we do, but also if we're not healthy while we're doing it, who are we really serving? And so I take a much, much slower pace with my books. I think The Jump took me a month and a half or 2 months, which it's actually still in my best interest to draft quickly because then I don't have the chance to overthink it.
Yeah.
But taking a more leisurely pace than a couple weeks was a great idea. I've also learned to like carve out space for myself. So in the span of like since Slay until now, I've become a mom, and I've also taken on a full-time job. And so carving out space that's just for me and the blank page has been really, really important for my mental health. I've also learned to incorporate movement into my life more. So I'm on the Peloton 5 days a week.
Yes.
No questions asked, because if I think about it, the answer will be no. I've learned a lot. Yeah, I'm really excited.
You know, it's so funny you bring up like writing Slay so fast, and it's like there are a lot of reasons why I always like think about like Don't Read the Comments and Slay as like sibling books. Like whenever I talk about my own book, I always bring up your book because like Don't Read the Comments was drafted in like 2 weeks. Like I went to a writing retreat. Nina and I were already talking about like our plans to have a baby, and I was just like, I got to churn out this book before children. Which, by the way, like anyone who's listening that might be, you know, a parent or thinking of having kids, like there are going to be a lot of people that tell you like, hurry up and get your creative work done before you have a kid because you'll never have time. So please ignore them. Like, please, it's the most toxic nonsense that people try to press down on creative people. You'll have the time. You will. But I didn't think I was gonna. I had those whispers in my head. So it was like a churned out in like 2 weeks kind of book. There's something about writing about what you care about that makes it not that difficult to churn out a book really fast.
Right.
And then the edits come. And then
oh boy, the edits. My poor editors have got to be so patient with me.
So you're talking about your full-time job. You know, you write in video games. What have you learned from writing in video games that has found its way into your prose writing?
Yeah, so prose writing and video game writing, they're quite different. They're quite the same and quite different. With prose, I found that, you know, I have time on the page to meander and think about, you know, have characters just go off on tangents. There's a moment in The Jump where like Yaz starts talking about APR percentages versus APY, and I dedicated like half a page to it, and I was like, okay, now I gotta stop. Like this is a personal this is a personal soapbox. I gotta stop. That would never make it into a video game. With video game writing, every ounce of fat is trimmed. Every single line, at least in the AAA space, every single line has to, you know, serve the story in a significant way, or it's likely out. And this was my experience with, specifically, I'm thinking of Subnautica Below Zero. Every single line had to serve the story, and there was a finite amount of space for things like item descriptions, and, you know, clarity is the number one thing you're thinking about with regard to like communicating things to the player. Whereas with a reader, like someone who's reading your book, they're reading from beginning to end. Like not many people crack open a fiction novel and just start right in the middle. Whereas in video games, people can encounter what you've written in several different orders, and they become their own storyteller. And so you have to think about things like, will the player encounter a certain line twice? And does the empathy they have for that character who said the same line twice go down over time? I'm thinking, have you played God of War?
Oh, yeah.
Mimir's line about being covered in Bifrost. If I have to hear that, it was every 5 seconds. Love the game. I was like, Mimir, we've been at this 30 hours. Oh my goodness. So yeah, those are some of the differences. And I think with having every line need to be like super quick and punchy, The Jump is a lot shorter than it might have been. And it's also way, way just faster. Just right out the gate, things are moving.
Interesting. So why did you want to get into writing video games? I mean, that's really cool. I feel like we all do, but I'm.
I feel like if you love to play video games, there's I mean, like going back to the player being a storyteller, right? Like we're all kind of commanding the game as we play it. We're all kind of like our little mini movie directors as we're playing the game in a way. And I think I've always wanted to write for video games. The first story game I ever encountered was actually Super Mario Sunshine, which people look at me funny when I say that's a story game, but like it has a plot. Like that was the first game I ever played with a plot. And I think ever since then I was like, wow, I would really, really love to make something with a story that you could experience firsthand. And growing up, that career was so far removed from where I was. I was like, this is an absolute pipe dream. It's like wanting to, be a character at Disneyland when you're little. Like, how do you even get to that point? And I think somewhere in the back of my mind, I also assumed like I had to be a white guy or an Asian guy in order to get into this field. And it turns out, nope. There's a lot of us who are Black women. There's a lot of us who are marginalized in 7 different ways from, so many different backgrounds. And if you're watching this and you're looking to get into gaming, there is a place for you among game developers.
So you mentioned the idea of that job being like so far removed from you as a kid. And like Super Mario Sunshine, like that narrative structure being like, oh, there's stories in this game. Maybe I can write this. What were the books as a younger reader or even older reader that drove you to want to write stories like the ones you write now?
Yeah, I mean, there were a few different books that I read when I was really, really little that really had an impact on me as a writer. I didn't realize until I was like 8 or 9 that someone had to create all of the books that were on my shelf, and that was like a real job. And as soon as I had a teacher say that, I was like, "Yep, that's what I want to do. I can't imagine doing anything else." But in particular, I remember picking up Ella Enchanted, and it was the first book that I read where, like, spoiler alert, we should be good by now, but spoiler alert anyway. The princess saves herself, which was just a totally wild concept to me at the time. Grew up on Disney, grew up on the traditional fairy tales, the damsel in distress, the whole 9 yards. And this was the first time where there was a princess with some autonomy. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can be the hero of a story. This is amazing. And then by the same author, Gail Carson Levine, is a book called Dave at Night, which is about a boy who, I believe he's white. I don't know if they ever stated his race, but he sneaks out of an orphanage every night to visit a jazz club next door. And the girl he has been sneaking out to see and like become friends with, and maybe something more, they're in middle school, so who knows, is Black. And that was the first time I saw myself as like the princess in the castle, so to speak. And so I went, oh my goodness, I can be like the princess in the castle. So there were so many books that just like, it showed me in different roles, and I realized I didn't have to be like the helpful friend character or the martyr character or so many other tropes where the Black character ends up becoming. So yeah, and I've picked up so many more over the years, and I'm just so happy they exist, and kids get to grow up with those now.
And I love that some of your writing is a response to that, right? Like it's a response to the books you've read growing up.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, even in Slay, there's so many moments where like people just assume Kira is a guy. They just assign he pronouns to Emerald before they realize it's a girl.
So what is are you allowed to talk about what's kicking around and next in the Brittney Morris extended universe of books?
Yeah. So right now I'm working on my first adult, my first middle grade, my first picture book, and I am also working on a YA that's an IP, so I can't talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that's the one I really want to talk about. There's also another YA in the chamber that is looking like it's going to be it's Mamma Mia meets The Godfather.
Yes.
Which might right.
That book.
What was that?
I think we talked.
We might have. We might have. Yeah. Yep. My agent was like, "Go on." So we'll see how that turns out.
That is amazing. All right. So you have all these books in progress. You have a full-time day job. I know you're working on a Oh wait, am I allowed to say that? Am I allowed to say what you're working on Insomniac? Is it in your Twitter? Okay.
Nope.
Woo! Okay. All right. So you're working.
We can say Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine. That's about
Okay.
where it's.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say I wasn't sure. Okay. Yeah. So working
Yeah.
on these Marvel games. What advice do you have for folks who are trying to figure out how to juggle it all as a writer? Right, full-time job, have a child and a family. How do you find the time?
Yeah, I think for me, the number one thing has been compartmentalizing. So from, 8 in the morning to 5 at night, it's Insomniac time.
Mhm.
I'm at my desk. It's all Insomniac. Like, that's what we're doing. Those are the designated hours. And then 5 to 7, when it's, bath time, I'm mom. And that's Atlas has my full attention. And then 7 to 10 is usually personal time or writing time, or it's kind of wild card hour, honestly. And then I also am careful to protect my weekends as much as possible. Saturday is our out day as a family, because my husband is an extrovert, and he's like, I need to see the sun, and I don't understand. And I'm an introvert, so I'm very much like, I need to be in my cave for at least 12 hours this weekend. So we've just kind of learned what everybody in the family needs and just kind of blocked time out. Yeah.
That's excellent. Yeah, being protective of your time is so wildly important when you're trying to juggle a whole bunch of stuff. That's fantastic. How do you stay creative working a creative job? After you've sat there and you're churning out story and you're churning out dialogue, how do you turn that off to work on your own stuff after? I feel like, I don't know, I feel like there's some burnout there. It happens to me in my agent life. How does it happen? What is it like?
Yeah, I mean, not saying I'm very good at it, but that's certainly a pivot. I think it helps to be writing such different characters from the ones I'm working on in my day job. Just totally different setting, totally different voices, totally different everything. But at any given time, I'm also reading or mainly listening to these days, because audiobooks are the only way I get books in anymore. A story that's completely different from what I'm working on in my day job and what I'm working on at home. So I just finished a few months ago the book, The Phone Booth at the Edge of the World, which is an adult novel, and it's beautiful. It's about a phone booth at an island in Japan that's quite remote, and people go to this phone booth to talk to their deceased relatives and process grief through talking to them, and just having conversations and just talking through what they've been through and things they never got to tell them, etc. Totally different from anything I'm working on, with a totally unique voice, and throwing that voice into the middle of everything else I'm churning out has helped me churn out very different types of things, and just keeps the creativity pot mixed up.
That's amazing. Wow, let's look at that book. So we've been talking for over a half hour now. Should we let people ask questions?
Sure, I love questions.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking at, I got the little chat open here. So if anyone has questions, feel free to chime in there. Yeah, please submit questions on over.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Can you tell us what you're working on next? I'm curious.
Yeah, so my next thing, I have a anthology coming out next month called First Year Orientation. It is a collection of stories set in an imagined liberal arts college all on the same day, and how these kids kick off their first day at school. And a lot of hijinks, a lot of struggling to figure things out and what it's like to be an adult, right after high school. And then in November, I have a book called With or Without You coming out, which is a YA rom-com about two teens in rival cheesesteak trucks set in South Philadelphia.
Yes.
Yeah, and other than that, nothing. My agent has a middle grade idea that I've been kicking around, and I know she wants to shop around, but I don't know. I might take a break. I keep saying that to myself, but I know something's gonna hit me, and I'm gonna end up texting you can you look at
break?
Yeah.
The break that's coming tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see.
Nice. Sounds magical. My pre-order is in for With or Without You.
Oh, you. Yeah, you know I had this one ready to go. I had to. Cannot wait.
Thank you. Have you looked under the jacket yet?
I have. Can I show people? I don't know. Is that on? So if you open up the jacket, what is that? There's some kind of secret code down there. Oh wait, does it appear the right way in the Zoom thing? I don't know. Let's see.
I think it's supposed to work in a mirror.
Oh, no, it's still the opposite way. But like when I took a picture of it, it was still kind of upside down. Yes, so there's a little crypto mystery there. There's something on the back. I'm gonna check the back. Yeah, it's excellent. I'm curious. So does your partner, is he also like a bookish like sort of person or no?
Not at all. I think the last book he read was Lord of the Rings in like college. Like it's been a while. No, he's very into video games.
I find that a lot with like the spouses and partners of writer people. My wife reads every now and again, but she's not super into the book stuff. Doesn't really read my books, which is very okay. I don't really want her to. She doesn't have to. She read Jagged Little Pill because she was curious, but that yeah. I feel like my books aren't for her. Like I write like nerdy stories, and she doesn't touch video games. So.
Oh, yeah. It's funny. My husband and I play very different video games. Like, there's very little overlap. Like, we're playing It Takes Two right now, and it's like, there's a lot of boss fights, so he's good, and there's a lot of story, so I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's more into like someone said I love It Takes Two. It's so good. It was funny though when I first asked him, I was like, "You want to play this game called It Takes Two?" And he said, "What is it about?" And I said, "Marriage counseling." And he said, "Are we okay? Like, is everything all right? Why do you want to what?" And then he's very into like Elden Ring and like Dark Souls, like the games that punish you the whole time you're playing.
Oh yeah.
I'm not cool enough for that.
You know what's really interesting? I think a lot about how wildly small the book industry is, right? It's spectacularly tiny. And the writing industry in general. Like you write books, you also write video games. Like I work in publishing, I also write books. And then, someone made themselves known in the chat here. So your editor, Deba, who is absolutely wonderful, also writes books. And I'm just curious, what is the relationship like editorially when you're working with someone who is also like that side of the creative as well? Because not all editors write books, not everybody, but yours happens to be a legend who does. Is that experience a little bit different?
I thought it might be because I switched editors. My previous editor, Jen Ung, went to HarperCollins, and I stayed with Simon & Schuster. And so I got Deba. And I thought the experience might be a little bit different, but they gave similar notes. Like it feels like with their clients, their editors first. But I also did get a lot of notes from both of them that were just like, "Oh my goodness, I love this moment," and like, "What is this character doing in this book? Like, I don't understand why he's here." Like those kinds of things. So they're both very analytical, and I can only imagine that Deba, while she's writing, she's also very like analytical and methodical in the way she approaches her writing. But I guess I'd have to ask her to confirm, but I can't imagine.
Yeah, I think I'd like being edited by someone who's also a writer. I feel like they will get things. But we have a question here. How do you manage to keep each character equally important through a multi-POV story? How do you keep one character becoming a favorite and taking over? Oh, that's a great question.
I love that question. I think with the jump, so for those who haven't heard, the jump is 4 POV, so 4 different first-person perspectives. And when I first started writing the book, it was going to be 100% Jax, and he was going to be like the only narrator. And I got to the end of the first chapter, and I went, "Oh no." Oh, this is going to be 4 different, isn't it? I really care what's going to happen to these other characters. And so I started chapter 2 with a silent apology to my poor editor for Deba. And from there, I switched to Yaz, mainly because she was the one that I cared about the most and the one that Jax had just been talking to on the bus. So it felt like a comfortable transition. And then I assumed that when the book was printed, the names of the narrators would not be at the top of each chapter. So I knew that I wanted each first sentence of every single chapter to make it very, very obvious what voice you're listening to. Like, I knew every first sentence had to just be like, okay, this is clearly Spider, this is clearly Han, based on, you know, where we left them in the previous chapter that we were reading about, based on their response to news that just popped up. So I'll have one character that says like, oh, look, you know, this next clue is all the way over in, you know, insert like 20 miles away location. And then you jump to the next character and they're like, God, this puzzle has me running all over this city. And you immediately know who it is. So yeah, I just tried to make every single voice distinct. I tried to, you know, make every first sentence count. And I also tried not to change the characters' locations unless the reader was there with them, so that like geographically things didn't get confusing. That's mainly how I tackled it with this book.
Are you a pantser or do you outline?
I am a plantser, so I do a loose outline and then I pants to the end of time.
I was gonna say, because it feels like when you have a book with so many shifting characters, I imagine having an outline is helpful there.
Yeah, absolutely. And with my outlines, like I keep it loose enough that each chapter just has one line, and I just have a bulleted list of all my scenes or chapters. And so with Jax's chapter, actually with all my chapters, I include what has to happen in the chapter for it to stay in the book, and then the hook at the end that keeps the reader turning the page. So in chapter 1, in Jax's first chapter, it might have said something like, introduce the Order, which is the group that posts the first clue, and Jericho and the Vault. Like the whole Cryptology, it's a setup chapter. And then the hook at the end is like there's a sticker of an eye on the bus that he sees. Yeah, it's kind of my outline structure. What about you? Do you outline?
Oh yeah, I'm notorious outliner. I write like a giant like 10-page synopsis to like break down my whole book, and then I write the book based on this like giant thing. Because then I know where all of it's going. I don't have to worry about like a chapter feeling boring or something. It's just all right there. It makes having Christian partners hard because like, hey, do you want to look at this idea I have? And surprise, it's 20 pages. Yeah.
So you must be a synopsis wizard. I need to call you.
Oh yeah, no, they are wild and chunky. And here's a question: as parents, authors, and gamers living in the era of VR, AR, etc., what do you think the future of gaming will be like for your children?
So, I mean, I know we're probably going to be a gaming family. Like, we have 2 parents who are into gaming. Like, good luck. But I think for our family, we've decided to keep our consoles in the living room, which is like a central location, and then just be very, very loose about what kinds of games we let our kiddos play. I feel like if they're comfortable playing it in front of us in the living room, they're good. Like, if they have no shame playing whatever it is in front of us, they're allowed to take it in. I'm cool with it. But I think, like, definitely augmented reality and virtual reality are going to be even bigger in the future. I could also see, like, you know, fully immersive gear being more accessible in regular households. Like right now there's, you know, mocap gear where it's like head to toe, it's, you know, motion capture technology in a studio, but it would be so cool if that was like a real thing. Like it was a real, you know, onesie you put on and the game senses all of your bodily movement. I could totally see that happening, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I definitely see VR being a way bigger thing right now. Like I have an Oculus Go that I bought for myself while I was writing Don't Read the Comments, and like the games on that are not good. Like they're not great. But like, you know, I see people play like VR using the PlayStation 5 and they'll play like Skyrim in VR and it looks amazing. It looks so cool. So I imagine it'll be more interesting. I don't know if my kid is going to be a gamer. You know, he's 5, So I'm not like, really expecting him to like want to jump on a game or anything, but like he loves cars and trucks. Like that is the huge thing for him right now.
Oh yeah.
I bought like a random racing game that was like on sale, and I was like, all right, let's see, maybe he'll want to be interested in this, and he just went right back to his Legos. Like he like looked at it and he was like, no, back to Legos, which is fine. Build Legos forever. That's all. It's analog Minecraft. Go for it.
Oh, nice. We have to give Atlas a controller with no batteries, because if we're both holding a controller and he's in the room, he's like, I need my own controller. I don't know what you think this is, but I'm in. So he thinks he's moving stuff around. It's funny.
So Natalie asks, would you ever do a book universe overlap, like a character in The Jump playing a game from Slay?
So I think, actually, I'm trying to think. I want to say there's a tiny piece that connects all of my books. There's a detail in each one that I think connects them to the universe of at least one other book of mine. And it's like, if you ask my editor, it's not, because technically all of the universes are connected. I just love messing with my readers. But that would be a lot of fun. And I could totally see my characters in The Jump, like, just absolutely killing it in Slay. So maybe one day.
Oh, I love that.
What about you? Are your stories connected?
Yeah. It's all very silly. Like, in like You Can Go Your Own Way, Aaron from Don't Read the Comments shows up at the video game the internet cafe the main character works at, to use a VR headset to talk to his girlfriend, who is Divya from Don't Read the Comments. So they're still together, of course.
Oh, yes.
So that happens, and then in With or Without You, the main character goes to a plant store that's mentioned in You Can Go Your Own Way. So they are all tied together. There's a reference to the pizza place in Don't Read the Comments in With or Without You, because you learn that they tried to start a food truck that failed. So there's a used food truck for sale in a parking lot that has the name of the pizza place on it. So there's some nods and winks here and there. The only one not in the universe is Jagged Little Pill, for I guess obvious.
Yeah.
That. But yeah, it's funny to say like the universe, because they're just books that are set in Philadelphia. Like there's no.
Yep. Oh, that's funny.
What else? I think if I had more fun questions for you. Like I know you have a short story in that lovely the Stay Inside anthology. What is it called again? I forget. The
Oh yeah, Together Apart.
Together Apart. Yeah. Are you interested in doing more short fiction and stuff?
I am. I am. Oh, I don't think I can talk. I can't talk details, but I'm in the anthology. The Black Girl Survives in this one, which is like, it's my first horror book, and I kind of went like really campy with it, so it's really ridiculous. Just it's a good time. I'm really excited about it.
Oh, short stories are so hard. Like I don't know what it is about them, but I can write a novel quicker than I can write a short story. It's just so difficult.
Same. It's like there's so much like thinking and trimming that has to be done, and just, I mean, you're telling a vignette, right, and not like a whole, like a person's whole life, or like, several days worth of content. Just totally different.
Oh, we got another question here. What is your favorite part of the writing process? Is it the world building, the character creation? Do you do anything specific to help you bring the stories to life?
Oh, I love that question. I mean, all of drafting is like my favorite. Like sitting down with a fully fleshed out idea in front of the blank page, like that feeling takes me back to when I was a kid, and like just, I mean, the nostalgia. It's a wonderful feeling. But I think like writing dialogue, like writing characters as they're speaking to each other, is probably my favorite. Just because like making all of the voices different and like really leaning into how different I want all of my characters to be, because then when they bounce off each other, they, feel even more different, because you've got conflicting opinions, and conflicting motivations, and I love me some conflicts. I think, yeah, writing dialogue and specifically drafting overall is probably my favorite. What about you?
Oh, I mean, probably making that giant synopsis is my favorite thing. Like,
Are you serious?
yeah, building my outline so I know what the entire book is. Like, once I get to the end of that synopsis, that's when I'm like, I have a book. Like, we can go, we can do it. I have a lot of like synopsises that like stop like 60% in because I'm like, I don't know if there's an ending here. I don't know if this is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, and I don't know about you, but getting over the middle of the book bump is also very
Mhm.
satisfying. Like, I can get like 30,000 words into a book and suddenly I'm just like, oh, I don't got it. I don't know. I don't know how to get over that bump there.
Yep.
Yeah. Ooh, and Uncle Bobbie's question. If you could tell your YA selves one thing, what would it be? Ooh.
Oh boy, just one thing. Ugh. Oh, I had a lot to say to myself when I was little. Um, I'm actually gonna steal an answer from Nick Stone.
Okay.
I was on a panel with her just recently at North Texas Teen Book Fest, and she had to answer this question after me, after I'd already given my answer, and I wish I had said what she said. She said, "Girl, you're not gonna marry that boy. He's not the one. He's not even that cute." That's exactly what I needed to hear. That was it.
Oh, that's a good one. Oh my god. I think mine would have just been it's okay to be patient. You know, like and I think this is a general advice for anyone who's listening that's also a writer that like when I was in high school and like off to college where I was like, I'm gonna be a writer, like I had these like bizarre deadlines in my head where I was like, I'm gonna have an agent by this age, I'm gonna finish a book by this age, I'm gonna be published at this age, I'll be a bestseller by this age. And all that's bad. You know, there's no expiration date or anything like that. Like you don't have to set those deadlines on yourself. It sets yourself up to disappoint yourself, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, don't do that. That's bad. I wish I didn't do that so much. Like my first book came out when I was 30. That is a wildly normal time to debut as a writer. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
That's great advice.
What tips do you have for those who struggle to write dialogue? Ooh.
Ooh. I have 2 tips for this one. First, overshoot it. So if you've got a character who is like the comic relief, I highly recommend writing the most ridiculous things you can think of. Like, just, I mean, if your character is talking at, 80% of what their character should be, make it 150%. Like, do too much with what they're saying. Um, and the second thing that helps is to read your lines. I'm talking like a game writer now. Read the dialogue out loud.
Yes.
Because if it sounds natural when you're voicing your characters back and forth, then it'll sound natural on the page.
It's fantastic advice. Absolutely. I tell people to read romance when it comes to dialogue, like, and not just like adult romance, but like, rom-coms and the like, because like romance writers, they do so much with dialogue and with banter where the dialogue isn't necessarily pushing the plot forward, but it's pushing the relationship forward. And like that dialogue, it's so good. It's such a great lesson.
What's your favorite romance?
Mm.
Now I gotta know.
My favorite rom-coms these days are just anything Emily Henry writes. She writes about book people a lot and like publishing and editors and writers, and it makes it so funny and so accessible. Like you don't have to be in the industry to get all the jokes, which is why I think they are selling millions of copies the way they are. I like Ashley. I'm looking at my books over here now too. I like Ashley Herring Blake's books a lot. Christina Loren a lot. Like it's 2 people. They managed to. I don't know how they do it where I feel like they have a book out every 8 months. And they're always just so good and so funny. And they experiment with genre and category a lot. Like one of her books has time travel in it. It's so good. And who else did I read recently? Oh, Rachel Lynn Solomon is really great. Yeah, I bet you would love Weather Girl, her first rom-com, because like
Yeah.
that book, she wrote a rom-com about depression, right? Like, and I know you tackle serious themes in your books, and I know like writing about mental health is important to you. And like I was just so blown away by how this like very funny, very spicy romantic comedy also had this like deep underlying current about talking about mental health and depression and how we take care of ourselves. And it's so good. I think it's her like least popular of her romance novels, and like I want more people to read it because it's amazing.
That sounds wonderful.
Oh yeah. Natalie asks top recommended books to read. All right, what are your favorite books that you recommend to people all the time?
Oh boy. So this list changes depending on the audience I'm talking to, because I recommend A Clockwork Orange, but not if I'm talking at a high school. Yeah. The thing I love most about that book, like beyond just, calling into question all sorts of huge moral like conundrums, is it teaches you a language by the end of it. Like at the end of the book, you're reading fluent NADSAT. And I'm like, can somebody do this for Spanish, please? This would be amazing and very helpful. I Gotta Name the Hate You Give, Always and Forever. I recently read The Karma Map by Nisha Sharma, who wrote Dating Dr. Dill. The Karma Map is so
cute.
Yeah.
It's another Philly area writer too.
Yeah. And then I also read my first Christie, Murder at the Vicarage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
I'm cheating. I'm looking at my own books. I'm like, what do I want to recommend to people? Like lately, I've been telling everyone to read Never Say You Can't Survive by Charlie Jane Anders. It's a craft book, basically, but it's also like a craft book for writers who are just like wrestling through these times that we're in right now, never say you can't survive this. And she just like all this just great insight about like resistance and how writing is resistance and how art can be resistant. It's just so good. It's so uplifting. Same thing with Jamie Attenberg's memoir. I Came All This Way to Tell You. It's like another memoir about the writing life. And like Jamie's story is fascinating because like she had like, I want to say like 3 novels out before like her one hit the bestseller list and before she finally had a hit. So like her memoir talks all about like being on the road and like touring and like sleeping on couches and like being 40 and wondering like, should I keep doing this? Like I keep trying and nothing's really and it's such like a candid look at like the life of an artist and what it means to just keep pressing and keep chasing something. And then fiction. What do I make people read all the time? Well, I recommend Slay by Brittney Morris all the time. I'm shoving that book at people. The Serpent King by Jeff Sentner, just because it's such a beautiful book, and he has this like lyrical style that is just so stunning. Let me see. Serpent King. Hero by Perry Moore. That book is probably like 15 years old at this point, but it was like the first like queer YA that I had read when I was trying to figure out what it was I wanted to be writing, and like it's the only book we have from him because he passed away sadly, but like it is just this remarkable story about like identity and who gets to tell you who you are. And have you read this book, Brittney?
No, but it sounds like I need to.
I gotta tell you about this book. So this book, it's about this teen boy whose father is basically like a Batman figure in like a superhero universe, but like his dad's old now. His dad's in his like 60s. His back is bad. He works as a janitor. He used to be a acclaimed, beloved superhero, but now like is bitter about superheroes because all of his friends are like immortal, superpowered people, and he's just a person. So he like hates superheroes. They all left him behind. And the son is wrestling with the fact that he discovers he has superpowers. What is his dad gonna think? And he's coming to terms with the fact that he's gay. And what is his dad gonna think? And there's this like really interesting thing where like he has to come out in like 2 different ways. and it's like, it's just so brilliant, and I'm so sad that he's gone. But I tell everybody to read it. It's amazing.
That sounds magical. You said it's called Hero?
Hero. Yep.
All right.
Hey
Yeah, I
guys,
gotta read that.
Oh, look who's back. Hello.
Hi.
I guess it's time to wrap up. Thank you so much. This was a great conversation. You guys gave me so much to think about.
Yeah, I had a great time.
I'm really
Me
glad
too.
to have gotten to. I think I loved where all the different places this conversation went. It really helped me know exactly the teen I will be gifting this to immediately after we close up here. So yeah, thank you so much to Brittney and Eric for this wonderful conversation. Congratulations on the book and on all of your upcoming projects.
Thank you.
And
Thank you,
Brittney,
everyone.
Natalie just said in the chat, this has been amazing. Thank you. I love your books.
Oh, thanks, Natalie.
Yes. So, to everyone watching, please go get your copy of The Jump. You can get it online or come to Uncle Bobbie's and get it. Thank you everyone who participated. Thank you to our partners at Simon & Schuster. Yeah, I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care. Thanks.